Welcome everyone to the Omniverse of Nick and part 3 of 3 with Dixon's Whispers, Merle vs. Beta, the finale to the spin-off of What If Daryl Died Instead of Merle. Now, before we begin, be sure to smash that like button on this video and subscribe to the Omniverse of Nick so you can help me make this channel bigger, better, and even more cool with stories and etc. But now, today's gonna be big for this finale, so you're not going to want to miss this. But let's dive in. We have just gotten into Merle and Nat, who were planning to stage an assault, surprise assault on the CRM. Once they get there, Merle and Nat finally opening and attack, with Merle leading it on. But that doesn't stop Beta, for even if the soldiers are attacked and killed, it doesn't stop Beta from going straight after Merle and power tackling him into a boulder. A slash is then reciprocated by Merle, but it's not a victorious slash for once. This slash with his sword hand is caught by Beta, knowing all too well about Merle's sword hand at this point. And sword in hand, he grabs Merle, now aiming towards his upper arm, and slams him over his shoulder onto the ground. Nat tries to help with his missile launcher, but gets fatally shot in the heart by Thorn. Merle, seeing this, recovering from the slam to the ground and to the boulder, mind you, angrily shouts in fury and sadness because Nat actually lived canonically a little bit longer here, so even Merle knowing him, it's sad. And he grabs his gun, turns his attention away from Beta, and fatally kills Thorn. So she dies pretty much kinda a little earlier than she did. And now we're about to get something really cool. Beta with his huge machete versus Merle with his sword hand. Merle, even though he was caught off guard for a second, is able to get a very good kick into Beta's stomach. And then we get a clash of weapons. Merle's sword hand and Beta's giant machete. This would be an amazing battle and would most likely, if not definitely, be the highlight of this spinoff. But Merle's sword hand is caught by Beta again. And Beta, even angrier than before, fueling up with energy and rage, is finally getting fuel within him to get his revenge, and angrily tells Merle that his life isn't the only thing that he's losing today, along with Beta getting his revenge. And, to show his point, holding the sword hand still, with all his might, Beta snaps Merle's sword hand with his bare hands, and then sucker punches Merle square in the face. But Merle, staggering a little bit, clutches his crossbow in hand, and with this in hand, shoots Beta square in the eye with an arrow, right in his left eye. Now, Beta pulled out 2 knives like a champ in his canonical time, but this is a 10 times and like 20, 30 times stronger Beta. So a crossbow to the eye would immensely hurt, but he would definitely be able to power through this. But Merle doesn't stop. He clutches a shotgun now in hand and shoots Beta square in the stomach. Now feeling fueled with energy over Nat's death and wanting to get rid of Beta once and for all, he runs forward fueled with energy and goes in to punch Beta square in the face and prepare to end his life. But when he goes for the punch, Beta catches it, surprising Merle immensely. Beta, now with a scarred, closed up, bloody running down eye, fueled by nothing more than rage, utter rage, tells Merle that he just made his last mistake. And with this, he reaches into Merle's vest, grabs his mask, which he knew that Merle had, remember, and fatally stabs Merle square in the chest. Now, supposedly, this kills him, but Beta knows that he's not done. And Beta doesn't want to be done with Merle. So, undecidedly at this moment, the screen just cuts off from this intervention. Sort of like you would see in the show. But now we cut to Beta having his mask back after forever. The old him is to come back, seemingly, but it's not. Beta is no longer the same that he was over 7 years ago. Actually, it would be kind of less than that, since it's not whenever he wasn't kidnapped at the same time Rick was. So, technically, it's been a little less, it may be close to, but point is, this isn't the same Beta, so now the mask is just a relic of the past Beta can use to the CRM's true advantage. Once Beta returns alone to base, the true monument for Okafor with Major Beale and the sword are shown to us fully and completely. But Beale is more upset now, because it's not just Okafor that's been lost. Thorn has died too, and he's still alive, along with a good amount of soldiers. So Beale talks to Beta alone. And as proud as he is that Beta's come full circle and Merle has been dealt with, he knows that there's still cost to come with this. They're still not out of hot water just yet. Beta, still bloodily scarred and blood running down his left eye, no more usage of it obviously, is still truly at 100% and tells Major Beale, or asks him, what's to be done now? And Major Beale says that that should be obvious. The threat that Beta deemed a threat, that tracked him down after all the escape attempts and everything, shows that Beta was still willing to fight for the CRM. So he's asking him to fight for it again by destroying the communities that Merle Dixon came from, to show his true allegiance to the CRM. Afterwards, Jadis confronts Beta, and once again says how surprised she is by his change. At the beginning, she would have never have expected him to become a forefront to being the possible next replacement for Beale in her eyes, and Thorn's and Okafor's, but a high general commander of the army, and killing the likes of the guy who made him come here and do all this. It's a big step, but she asks him, what does Beale want now? And what's to be done? Beta says that he too never would have expected himself to join with this army, but it's his new calling. It cost him his pride, his eye, his ultimate who he was, and now the mask that he carries is a relic of the past. But he got his half revenge, but it's only an inkling as to what he cared about before. Now he cares about serving the army his way, and he is told by Beale to Jadis and everyone else to gather every article and soldier that they can to show his true allegiance to the army. They're going to wipe out every community that Merle Dixon came from. Not only will this satisfy Beta's old thirst and quest for revenge, but it will make sure that the CRM's safety and security is truly and utterly secure. And Jadis wholeheartedly agrees to this, and she just cannot understand that this is the same Beta. But she puts those thoughts to rest for the mission they're about to embark on. 3 helicopters are what the soldiers station themselves in for the upcoming rise to conflict. And the soldiers that go follow Beta at the forefront as the High Chief and Commander of this mission, with Jadis and 15 soldiers at his helm, with Jadis being obviously the second in command. Alexandria is the first community that the CRM comes across, and the first of their victims and targets. The 3 helicopters station themselves near the community's entrance. One stays, while the other 2 find the other communities. The first copter stations itself directly on top of Alexandria's entrance point and just its general field, and bombs it to Kingdom Come. Alexandria is completely and utterly bombed and destroyed. Just like Atlanta, just like Los Angeles. It's bad. This is very bad. It is completely and utterly destroyed, as is every single person there. Except a few. There are survivors. Aaron, for one thing, who lives, but his arm is badly burned, bombed, and crushed amidst the overwhelming chaos. And Gabriel survives too, but just barely. 5 soldiers are stationed in said copter, and they go down to kill any survivors. Because you gotta think, Beta would tell them of the resistance of the communities. So it's expected. But Aaron and Gabriel had fought way worse in the show. And to be honest, it's very surprising that they lived to the end. But they managed to take the soldiers down. Because, come on, it's 5 soldiers and it's Aaron and Gabriel. But Aaron's arm has to be amputated. And, thankfully, he is still able to survive the procedure through Gabriel and get his spiky arm, honestly, way later than he did. Now, how is this remotely possible that he got this amidst all this chaos, the burnings, and just so short of time? Well, there's a very simple answer to that. Merle's influence with his arm and everything, and the sword hand, would attract a lot of attention amidst communities who would have replacement arms for those who would lose their appendages. Also, I think that Merle would stretch that influence on himself and apply with Michonne and everything to get replacement backup appendages. So Aaron would ultimately have this on hand way sooner, but he would lose his hand a lot later. So that's kind of funny and ironic. But with this, Aaron and Gabriel know that they have to try and help the other communities, even if the helicopters beat them. The kingdom is next, and Ezekiel sees something from up ahead, a helicopter looming above the kingdom. But by the time that he sees it, it's too late. The helicopter stationed there bombs the kingdom to utter complete mayhem. Jerry and Ezekiel are the last 2 survivors of the kingdom. The 5 soldiers stationed there drop down out of the helicopter, and Jerry knows that how injured they are, it's going to be real hard for him and Ezekiel to take care of this, and one of them or both of them have to survive. But Jerry offers to sacrifice his life to kill the soldiers. And as much as Ezekiel is heartbroken at this, and the fact that he has no one left from his kingdom, he knows that he has to go on. He knows that he has to try and find the other communities and help out and station there before he is either found or the other communities are destroyed. And last but not least, the hilltop is the last victim and circumstance of the CRM. And Gregory, who's alive, hilariously is out there to spectate and ask what the crap is going on before the helicopter station there, the main one, by the way, blows up the hilltop and bombs it to utter destruction. And now, this is where the big and most important moment of the bombings especially, and ultimately the story as of now, comes into play. Because every main character, all the main ones, the important ones, and the big ones are here. And that's who matters in when they get killed. Clara, Martinez, Milton, Schumpert, Alan, Karen and David, Bob, Mika, Ryan, aka Lizzie and Mika's father, Tyrese, Sasha, Zach, Patrick, Beth, Glenn, Pete, Noah, Morales, Jesus, Tara, Alicia, Gregory, Luke, Kelly, Ken, Earl, Tammy, Elijah, and Francis are all killed in the bombings, and the main helicopter drops down with the last 5 soldiers, Jadis, and a fully armed up Beta, part of the CRM. Now, he reveals himself, very surprised that there are survivors, but decides to reveal himself to the survivors, seeing very familiar faces, seeing this as a final scare before they end the communities and the people here once and for all, also for some old payback. And everyone who is alive and knew Beta is utterly terrified, confused, and sad, because how is he alive? And the sad part comes from Andrea and Michonne, and ultimately the scared part too, and Rick and everyone else, because this means that something happened to Merle. Because the whole point of the ending was accepting Merle going after Beta and ending that story. Ending Beta. But here Beta is, but no Merle. And Beta laughs at this, saying that, yes, Merle did find him. And they can all ultimately blame Merle Dixon himself for what has happened to the communities that they have just come across, including this very one here. It's all because of him. As a matter of fact, as a last welcome gift for Beta's return, they can all see Merle one last time, and throws out a walker with half a broken blade on one hand and a deep, deep gash wound through his chest. It's Merle. Merle was killed, but Beta went wild, if you know what I mean. Everyone is heartbroken, but then that heartbreak and sadness turns to utter rage. Andrea, Michonne, Rick, Carl, Judith, RJ, and every single last survivor of the Hilltop community, and everyone who is still alive, that being Aaron, Gabriel, and Ezekiel, who come here, kill off and shoot down Jadis and every one of the last 5 soldiers in an utter rage after seeing what has just happened. Beta grasps his mask and puts it on as a last field to himself to kill off everyone, fully, completely, use the walkers to his advantage, and as a final note, just to end everyone here. But Rick, Michonne, Andrea, RJ, Carl, and Judith won't allow this. And while they're killing off Jadis and all the soldiers, they also turn their eyes squarely on Beta, seeing him as the root for all of what's just happened, and to avenge Merle especially. They shoot Beta down immensely. And once it's all over, no more shots, no more people, Rick tells Andrea specifically that it's her kill. Merle was her lover, and it's only right that Andrea avenges Merle, once and for all, ending Beta. But she has to be sure he's actually dead. And once Andrea monologues, "This is for Merle," and everything like that, Beta's one good eye opens and with his one knife in hand, slashes Andrea's throat, killing her. And this is the end of Andrea after a longer survival than any part of her, obviously, that I've ever covered. But this was also Beta's last mistake. The one character I haven't mentioned until now, the grown-up teenager, Daryl Jr., is also still alive. Seeing his mother and father die straight in front of him, he finishes the job, ends the story, and ultimately ends Beta himself. And with that, Daryl Jr. has killed Beta and ended this spinoff. And so, after Daryl Jr. sees the death of not only his father, but his mother also, he shoots Beta, therefore ending the spin-off's plot of both Merle and Beta, and ultimately putting an end to our story. And how is that, you might ask? Shouldn't the story maybe go on to a CRM war and an ultimate final battle to decide, like, and avenge Merle and Andrea and everyone that they just lost after the bombings? Shouldn't it go on to more than that? Well, not really. Because, for one thing, I feel that Merle, for one thing, dying and then Beta, it was the ultimate closure. And let's face it, with how few people were left in all the communities now, they would be no kind of match against the CRM. And sure, Rick and Michonne are going to be gearing up to fight, like, here, at this moment, this pre-recording, against the CRM in the final battle. But I just don't think that they're going to kill all the soldiers, just the two of them. And the situation works even with these people in this story. I just don't find it possible, really. And yeah, this is sadly the end of our story. Now, it could go one of two ways from here. It could go the direction of Rick and the group just trying to recover, and then the CRM just vanquishing them eventually. Or we could see a Fear crossover, and maybe they could help out with the cause and fight the CRM and somehow maybe win. Or the group after Merle and Andrea's death and Daryl Jr. avenging their deaths by finally taking out Beta, they all go together to the CRM and would either win or lose. It's a real undecided moment, and I feel that you guys could probably, like, collectively come up with a vote for how the final part of the story goes. But all things considered, there really isn't much to talk about. Doing the spinoff, or at least one of them, with one of my Walking Dead stories, it was a change. It definitely was a change. And I like how I did it. It's just by the point of Merle ultimately making the ultimate sacrifice and, you know, taking Beta's eye, and then the final war and everything, it just came down to that was the ultimate closure for the group, which is something I wasn't expecting to do. I was expecting to, like, maybe do Merle, like, kill the CRM with Nat, but that idea kind of was brushed aside. I didn't find it right. And this ultimately, I feel, is just the best way to capitalize Merle living instead of Daryl. He would ultimately make a great leader, but by the time that Beta would be around, it just would be too much. And if Merle was the center instead of Daryl, we gotta think that it would be somewhat like this. This is just one of the ways that it really could have, should have, and would have gone. But I hope you guys enjoyed the story nonetheless. The finale for it was good, and the spinoff and everything. Hope you guys enjoyed whatever ending happened and everything. And with that, I'll see you guys soon for What If Vegeta Became Immortal. Stay tuned for that. You guys didn't think this was the end of the video, did you? Well, the Omniverse of Nick has a new feature. A sneak peek at what's next to arrive.